Let's go. Yo. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. Never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast. And that's facts.
Well, welcome in Bears on Track show brought to you by Chicago Sports Podcast. Thank you guys for checking us out tonight. We're so happy to have you along. We're talking about the Bears. We're talking about football. And I got my buddy to do that and help us out here. Chris Light Dreams Brown. Haven't seen you in a couple weeks, man. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, man, been through a couple things, but I got to be here when I get here. Love talking football. You know how I get
Yeah,
down.
I know. I feel the same way, man. Same thing with me. And it feels good because it just kind of gets your mind away from everything, gets you rolling, and get you talking about what we all love around here, and that is football, and that's the Chicago Bears. So thank you guys for watching tonight. You can share this video with all of your other Bears friends and fans and tell them all about Bears on Tracks, which is brought to you by the Chicago Sports Podcast. And tonight we're talking about why the Chicago Bears' recent depth roster isn't enough to win, or is it enough to win? If we look over the free agent signings that we've had so far, we're going to break down our roster. We're going to break down what we think we need to improve. And you guys can let us know as well in the chats and let us know what you think and what you think we need to do to improve on the Bears roster. And that will start us off with the quarterback position, Chris. And our quarterback position as it stands right now is Caleb Williams, Tyson Bagent, and Austin Reed. Now, it's quite simple. This is Caleb Williams' team. Tyson Bagent has been here for the last couple of years and with Caleb last year. So the question is do you sign a veteran backup? And the ones I have listed right now is Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, who I read earlier, right before our show started from Tom Pelissero, a report coming out that he signed with the Giants. So I think he might be off the board, or Russell Wilson. So I have a couple of veterans out there. I don't think we necessarily need a veteran quarterback. I kind of like the way our room is right now, especially when we have a coach like Ben Johnson and all the hype that we have around Ben Johnson and the coaching staff that he's brought in. I don't know if a veteran quarterback is necessary, but let's say you.
I don't think it's really necessary, but if you want to bring up your quarterback the right way, the best for some rookies, the best thing to do is to have that veteran leadership in a locker room that's been there before. So if you bring in a guy like Joe Flacco, yeah, he's a suitable backup, but also at the same time he'll provide that leadership for a guy like Caleb going in his second year, and then you also have Tyson Bagent, who will also benefit from that too. So that whole quarterback room can learn from a guy like Joe Flacco, who's shown that he still has a little bit left in that arm, and he can still fling the ball down the field. So when you have a guy like that, it helps. It helps when it comes to maturation of the quarterback position.
I kind of surprised guys like Joe Flacco and Russell Wilson aren't signed yet.
No, I'm not. A lot of teams in the league, they already settled on who they're going to have as a signal caller. Some of them are, 1-2 year guys that they're still riding with. Other guys are, 6-7 year veterans that, they still can take their offenses and move the ball and put points on the board. So, for a guy like Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, who are on the downsides of their career, it's more about what you can give these teams, and as far as what we've seen from Flacco and Wilson, it's not. He's either on the same level or not anywhere near the cream of the crop as far as the quarterback position in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. And I think both. I think once the Aaron Rodgers drama and saga goes down here in just a little bit, I think these guys are going to sign somewhere. I think it all depends on if Aaron's going to sign. Like there was reports today that he's with the Steelers all day. So I think it's all going to happen. And if we do want a veteran quarterback, it's something that they're going to have to think about and think about fast. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. We have our running back position as well that I feel is pretty strong, but I want to get your opinion on this too, Chris. So DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer, who is more of a special teams player, and Ian Wheeler, who tore his ACL last year, so you didn't get to see much of him, but that's currently who's on our roster right now. And as far as free agents go, there's a couple of big names that are still out there. You got J.K. Dobbins, you have Nick Chubb, and Jamal Williams. Now, everything I have read so far about this draft, it's a running back draft. So, like, you can find running backs in this draft that can come in and be impact players right away in the third, fourth, fifth round. whether that's true or not, you don't get like that type of depth of a position very often. So I think if you're going to find that type of running back, and you kind of Ben Johnson's kind of alluded to that about the running back position, how important he thinks it is. Do we think Jetty's going to be there at number 10? I don't think he's going to be there at number 10. I think he's going to be picked well before that. So I think this is a draft. None of these names on the veteran list for me do anything for me. I think this is a draft where you go get that running back and you try to find that running back that can be there with you for years to come. But what do you think, Chris?
I don't really think the Bears are gonna go and draft that high at the running back position, but it's understandable because of a guy like Ashley Genty, contact balance, speed, power, got multiple moves, jump cuts are phenomenal. And when you see him on film, it just looks like this guy's unstoppable. It's like he's like, playing tackle football with a bunch of kids out there sometimes, how he just runs down the field. The thing I'm worried about is I don't see enough power. Like, don't get me wrong, Roshan Johnson, he's a serviceable back, but the thing is that's going to concern me is his health. You brought up another running back who's coming up with torn ACL. Usual thing with the running back coming up with a torn ACL, they're not the same that initial year after the injury because subconsciously you don't really trust the leg. So I wouldn't mind getting like one or two backs just for depth. You get a power back because you know how Ben Johnson rolls. He has a power back, and he also has a guy that's explosive. So you can get a guy like J.K. Dobbins who can run with power. He runs with power. He also has some speed. But the thing is, you got to worry about him is his health. But when he's healthy, he pops off when he's running the ball. And you can go in the draft. You can get a guy who you can get a bigger back, or you can go for speed. Like a running back from Virginia Tech, Tootin. Yeah, like you could attack this in multiple ways. So I think they do need more depth, just because of the conditions involving every back on the roster.
And I think that's going to happen, Chris. I do. I think that's going to happen, whether it's close to the draft, in the draft, or if they do go into the free agency. I think there's going to be another back. Because, again, this is a brand new coaching staff. So is Roshan Johnson. We heard Ben Johnson talk about DeAndre Swift and what he thought of him and had high praise for him. But a guy like Roshan Johnson, does he fit with him, or is he looking for something else? To your point, too, on some of the ways he likes to use his running backs, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and how it goes into the draft and after the draft as well. So I truly think it's going to be in the draft. I think it's going to be, they're going to grab him in the draft, but we'll wait and see. We have what do we know? Oh man, we're almost like a month away until the draft right now. I had to look at, I'm like, man, it's already the 21st and we're only like a month away, dude. Like it's literally coming up so soon here. And I can't wait because it's always my favorite. And especially with a new coaching staff this year too. Hey, thank you guys. I see our friends in the chat today. We got Brandon, we got Illinois Jones, and Sean. What's up, guys? It's so good to see you guys in here, man. As we're talking about the Bears and the depth chart and what we need to see to improve to make this team even better than what it is right now. And that brings us to the wide receivers, which I think this is an interesting position, Chris, because we have our number one and number two. We got our DJ Moore, Roma Dudze, Zacchaeus that we picked up from Washington, Tyler Scott, and then Devin Duvernay, who's more of a special teams player, who we also just signed here over the last week or so. So the question is do we go into the draft for a receiver? There's also a couple of big names that are still out there. You still have Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, who I was reading about was visiting with the Patriots. So I feel like these guys are kind of close. Keenan Allen and Tyler Lockett. So those are four pretty big names out there. Now, are they the same players as they once were? Probably not. But are they receivers that could come in and help your team right away? When you have a guy like DJ Moore and a guy like Roma Dudze that's going into his second year and you can bring another veteran presence, I think so too. So how do you attack the wide receiver position, or do you just leave it as it is? I know we just said this guy is also from Washington.
I know some people gonna disagree with me when I say this, and I understand it. I say bring Keenan Allen back, and the reason why I say that, there's a connection he has with Caleb when it comes to certain routes, certain plays, and you could tell they had that connection on where Keenan knows where he's going to throw the ball in this situation. Caleb knows what Keenan's looking for in this particular situation, and that type of connection is hard to find. And sometimes when you have quarterbacks that have that connection with the guy, and then that guy's not on that team, they don't look the same because they don't have that same, like, it's kind of like a comfort zone. You know what I'm saying? Security blanket. And I feel like in a lot of situations last season, Keenan Allen was that security blanket because of how he's able to run his routes. Even though many say he's lost a step, his route running is still top level. So I honestly think you bring that guy back. You also have a guy like a Roma Dunze who kind of fits the same stature, and then he can actually just still continue to learn from a veteran like Keenan Allen.
You bring up a good point about Keenan Allen because we talked a lot about this on our show, especially in the beginning part of the season last year, that we didn't know if he still had it or not because it didn't seem like he was fitting into the offense very well. Now, listen, we had a lot of issues with our offense last year. Our coordinator ended up getting fired midway through the season. And I felt like those last 6 to 8 weeks, man, he and Caleb were on it. Like they were on it. They were finding their chemistry together. I felt Keenan was that veteran presence that Caleb needed in that locker room. There was something that was there. And listen, is Keenan out there maybe trying to get the last contract? Of course he is. We don't know how many years he has left, but I thought he was such a good fit on this team. Now, this is a new coaching staff. This is Ben Johnson. I think Keenan Allen can fit on many different teams, but I guess it's going to be the question is that a Ben Johnson type of player, Chris? I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Okay. All right. See, I honestly do. I think he'd be like an older version of an Amon-Ra St. Brown because they do something similar. They both are guys that get open with their route running and their football intelligence. They know how to dissect zones. They know when to sit in the zone, show the quarterback your hands. They take care of their quarterbacks, and they're great with their route running. So when you like those guys, I see them kind of mirroring each other. I just see that Amon-Ra is a younger version of him, and yeah, I do think he would fit Ben Johnson's system really well, because now not only that, you have something similar to his offense in Detroit. You have a guy with speed with DJ Moore. You have a guy that can make certain catches, and when his name is called in Roma Dunze, now you have that guy that can dissect zone coverages between the linebackers and the safeties and a Keenan Allen, and a guy who can who also still win on one-on-ones. So those three actually do kind of mirror what Ben Johnson was used to in Detroit.
And it'll be interesting to see where Keenan Allen ends up. It's so strange to me too that Mike Williams, his old teammate with the Chargers, ends up signed before he was signed. And I thought Mike Williams actually had an off year last year, and he kind of said that in his press conference, saying that it was a year that he could forget. But it kind of it was a little surprising to me that he was signed before for Keenan Allen, and I always thought Keenan Allen was a little bit of at least at this point of their careers, a better player. But who's to say? Because I thought Amari Cooper did pretty well with the Bills last year, and he's still out there. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how these receivers fall and where they sign and how the dominoes fall after that. As we are talking about the Bears' recent depth roster isn't enough to win, or is it enough to win? We're going position by position here. You guys can chime in as well. Let us know what you think. Our tight end position, we currently have Cole Kmet, Darius Smythe, who we just signed, and Stephen Carlson. So the question is do we find another tight end in the draft? There's also a couple of names that are still out there in the free agent that none of them really do much for me. Tyler Conklin, Hayden Hurst, Irv Smith Jr., a couple of veterans that are still out there. But there are a couple of tight ends in this draft. We've done some mock drafts, not only on our show here, Chris, but many other shows here on Chicago Sports Podcast that you can go back and look where you can find tight ends. When we did those mock drafts, where you can find some pretty good useful tight ends in the third, fourth, and fifth round. This is a pretty good draft for tight ends, and I think that's where I would lean. But I think this is a position that they need to attack, and they need to get somebody else in that tight end room.
I totally agree. When you just hear the top two's names, Conklin and Hurst. Conklin, he's in his 30s, and then on with Hayden Hurst. Unfortunately, if you heard about Hayden Hurst, you know about the condition that he was facing, and then you want to keep tabs on that, and hopefully he recovers from that. The thing is that with the tight end position, you have to attack it in the draft. I agree with you. I don't see like any player right now that could give that position a boost. And if to be honest, I don't feel they have to attack it unless you want a certain level of depth. But with Durham Smythe and Cole Kmet, I think that's a pretty good 1-2 punch there. So I'm good at the tight end position, but if you want to add one or two pieces, yeah, go get a late round pick, and hopefully that guy blossoms into something that we never even expected.
You know what I like about the Smythe signing too? Because if you think about it, this offensive line, as much, and we're going to talk about that next, but our offensive line, we got all the new pieces on there. At the same time, it's going to take a little while to gel and get everything together under a new coaching staff, a new offensive system. So I think it's going to be important when you have a guy like Smythe, who's a good blocker, where you can keep him in on certain times and certain plays, and get that offense and that cohesiveness together. I like that signing. I think that's an under the radar signing for this team, and I think he's going to make a bigger impact, especially the first half of the season that you would think for a tight end.
I totally agree. He's another one of those guys that he takes care of the quarterback. Knows when and we did a show I think about a week ago. We went over the film. Guy knows how to throttle down and without throttle down before overrunning the zone, so he doesn't run into the safety, making it a tougher throw. Sits down in windows, hands catcher, and just he's the north and south type of guy. But he also can be moved around, and we've seen that in his time with Miami, where they've used him in different positions, have him run different certain routes at different levels, and he's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to his position at the tight end spot. So I'm that's what makes me happy about the Durham Smythe signing because of the fact that he could do more than one thing. He's not just a blocker; he can guy that can go out and catch passes. And then when it comes to contact, he gonna make sure the defender feels it more than he does. So that type of I'm all systems go for a Durham Smythe acquisition. So that's actually one of the main reasons why I was saying you don't really have to get the tight end position, add anything to it. If you do, you can go younger. Outside of that, I don't really see anything else.
And that's what's going to be interesting when we see what happens with the draft and the tight ends. As I see in the chat room, I see Atmas on here. What's up, dude? And Sean, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for watching tonight. And you can share this video too with all your other Bears friends. And we're talking Bears all the time here. Bears on Track show brought to you by Chicago Sports Podcast. Thank you guys for watching tonight. You guys can catch all of our shows on our YouTube channel as well. You can like and subscribe, get that notification whenever we have a new show coming on. That brings us to the offensive line, Chris. And listen, we know what they've done here in free agency because if right now, if it was season was to start today, we would have Braxton Jones as our left tackle, Joe Thuney as our left guard, Drew Dalman as our center, Jonah Jackson right guard, Darnell Wright as our right tackle. And then some of our notable backups, Karan Amagaji, our rookie from last year going into his second year. We got Bill Murray, Doug Kramer, Ryan Bates, Chris Glazer, Joshua Miles, just to name a few. Here's what I think for the offensive line. Listen, they're not going to go out and spend more money. They spent a lot of money on the offensive line this season. So they're not going to go out there unless there's something that really comes here after the June 1st cuts. If they're going to get anything more and build depth, it's going to be through the draft. Now, the big question is for me is who's going to fall at that number 10 pick? Or is that person going to be there? Is that Will Campbell going to be there? I don't know the answer to that question, but if you have one of those offensive linemen in the first 10 picks that are there for that spot, is that something you consider taking, or do you have that confidence in Braxton Jones? Because I thought at times Braxton Jones did play well last year. Donald Wright, to me, at times played well last year. Are they finished? I don't think both of them are finished products right now, but I do think with the signings of these free agents that we did this offseason, I think it's going to make both of those guys better. So with that being said, is this something in the draft that you attack as far as the first round with that number 10 pick, Chris?
For the left tackle spot, definitely. For the right tackle, I think the right tackle Darnell Wright, he has a higher ceiling, so I believe he can the sky's the limit for him based off of what we've seen in his years in the NFL. But I do think that the left tackle, yeah, we have if we have a guy that falls in the draft to that 10th spot, one of the top tackles, I would go for it. Now, I also would want to add depth to the other positions because you got a guy like Joe Tooney who's up there in age, and injuries happen. That comes with the NFL. So I would say add depth, add as much add as much depth as you can when it comes to the offensive line, just because of the simple fact that you don't want that one injury to just make it now, the floodgates are open to where now you can't protect your passer. So, and you can't run the ball. That's another thing that's key to that too. So the tackles, I would say address the left tackle as a priority. And if you want for the right tackle, you could just add depth in that position. The guards add depth because of age. like preferably for the left guard, and just add depth just in case of injuries. So I have no problem with having you know over 12 offensive linemen, for the roster or something like that, just because, that position is so pivotal to that offense even getting anywhere as far as running and throwing. The game is won in the trenches, and you have to be able to dominate there to be successful.
You brought up a good point. You said depth. And what was our big problem last year? Depth with the offensive line. When we had injuries, we didn't have that depth. So it's so important, I think, in this draft. And I know we still need a lot of help in a lot of other areas, but when it comes to depth, especially on the offensive line, I think that's going to be key. And are you going to be able to find, to what you said, Chris, those guards in like the 5th round or the 6th round, or that other tackle, or somebody that we can just plug and put in there in case one of these guys goes down, because we had a lot of injuries last year. So I think it's going to be really important that you go into this draft, find that depth. And I'm seeing some stuff like Ant Mason's chat says he's first pick, George's uh um the Williams, the edge, Williams. And listen, you're not going to go either way. I think defensive or offensive front for the first pick. I think you can go find either way, but the depth's going to be very important for the offensive line. So as we finish up with the offense here, we're going to move on to the defensive side. Speaking of the defensive line, as of right now, Dea Adebango would be our starter, who we just picked up from Indianapolis. Jervon Dexter, Grady Jarrett, who we got from Atlanta, Montez Sweat, and then some of our backups as well. Austin Booker, you have Andrew Billings, Zach Pickens. I think it's going to be an interesting one this year, how he fits in. Dominic Robinson, Daniel Hardy, just to name some of our depth pieces on our defensive line. And if you wanted to go the free agent route, we still have some guys that are out there, some names that maybe 5 years ago, you would look at these names and they would be day one free agent signings, like a Matthew Judon, a Zadarius Smith, Von Miller, Calais Campbell, and Jonathan Bullard. Now, are these guys veteran pieces that you could put in there? Yeah, of course they are. Are they the same players that they once were? No. But I think if you were to get an example like a Zadarius Smith, I thought he did a pretty good job in Detroit last year when they made that trade from Cleveland. And then he put in there, was he Aiden Hutchinson? No, nobody's Aiden Hutchinson. He's one of the five best defensive players in football, but I think he did a very good job filling in for him. So when you look at the defensive line, and I already said here in the chat about George's Williams, is that something you would address in the draft? Is that something you take here as a free agent, get one of these free agents to come in, or is it both, Chris?
I would say a little bit of both. The Grady Jarrett signing was very key, but what I've seen from the two edges is you got guys that are very disruptive, but you don't really see them getting to the quarterback consistently, and that's the only thing that's the only concern I have. It's can they get to the quarterback consistently to the point where they're wreaking havoc, so that quarterback doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket. So um, that's really it. I mean, Grady Jarrett, explosive first step, uh, a game wrecker in the middle when he gets going. But then you have a Montez Sweat on one side, and you have our latest signing on the other side. And I don't think they're going to really attack it as much just because of how much money they put in. So I think Chicago sold on it, but I wouldn't be surprised. And actually, I'd be happy if they've done more.
We got our guy Brandon Hyatt, the creator here of Chicago Sports Podcast, joining in. What's up, Brandon?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
We're good, man. We're good. We're going over a defensive line right now. We're going over a defensive line. How do we want to attack that in the draft? I listed a couple of free agents that are still out there. And Chris was just talking about what he was thinking. What about you, Brandon, when we think of the defensive line and we look at our depth of it right now? Is this something you would think?
I'll tell you what. If I'm thinking about the defensive line, there is not two better guys that I trust than Matt Cooper and Chris Brown. You guys will pick them straight. You guys will shoot them straight. I tell you what, if Mason Graham is available at 10, I'm running to the podium.
I think that's a big if, man. I listen, man. If Mason Graham's still there at 10, hell yeah, man. I think that would be my number one. But I don't know. Do you think he'll be there number 10? I don't think he'll be. I think he'll probably be like.
I'm glad you asked me that question, super producer, because I'll tell you what. I think there's a chance, and here's why. There's only so many picks that can go around till you get to 10. And we can all theorize and spitball and try to drum it up and listen to the Mel Kipers of the world and Brandon and all that. But at the end of the day, let's just try to be realistic. Can one of you two or somebody try to pull up the order? I will do this without that, but we could get a little bit, if it's a possibility, because I know there's at least 3 teams in the top 9, and I'll take us out of it because we've already got a quarterback in Caleb Williams that need a quarterback. So now we're
Brandon,
down to. Go ahead.
Oh, I say, me and Chris were talking about that when we were going over the quarterbacks earlier. I was like, I think the big domino to fall here is when Aaron Rodgers, if or when he signs with the Steelers, because we were talking about some of these other veterans that are out there. So once Aaron Rodgers signs, it's like, do these veterans, does that shake up what some of these teams are going to do at the quarterback position? Like, does that shake up what the Giants are going to do? Does that shake up what the Browns are going to do? I feel like do you think the Aaron Rodgers domino is going to have something to do with that?
I don't think that he goes to the Giants. I think he left the building in Pittsburgh, but I think they get it done in Pittsburgh. I don't know anything. I'm just a fan like you guys, and I definitely know a little bit more in terms of the Bears than I would Pittsburgh, but all of it's speculative until the ink's, signed, right? Mm-hmm. Or the ink's dry. But here's the deal. I don't think that the top 10, I don't think the Steelers fall within the top 10. I still think those 3 teams need quarterbacks. So, hypothetically speaking now, you could take 3 teams out of the equation. I know there's at least one team that needs an edge because Abdul Carter leaves. One team obviously needs a running back because it seems like the Raiders and the Cowboys are both fighting over, Ashton Genty, right? So it quickly narrows. I've even seen a receiver in the top 9. So we're already down to like 3 other picks where maybe somebody picks a left tackle or something like that, or another edge. Or, even that defensive back from Michigan. I'm just saying, it very well could be, Matt, where he's available at 10 and we have a big decision to make in that, because do you let a guy like that leave the building?
Well, here's my rebuttal to that. My only issue is I don't really see him falling that far because it's rare to find a guy who is a top 10 pick, but
Right.
because of his skill set and his build as a player, he can be seen as a tweener where you can put him at the guard or the tackle depending on the needs of your team, and he's one of those players. So when you look at a guy like that in the top 10, they rarely fall to 10. They usually go like a little bit higher.
Mason Graham's a defensive tackle. He wouldn't be a guard or a tackle.
I'm thinking of the tackle. The defensive tackle?
Yeah, Mason Graham.
The defensive tackle.
Wolverines.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. The defensive tackle. Yeah, I would expect him to fall. Only because of the simple fact that when you look at defensive tackles, it's rare that they get picked in the top 10. Now, that type of guy, if he falls to us at 10, oh yeah, I would. When we get to pick 9, I'm already writing his name on the card. I'm not even going to wait to see if it's announced. Once they say the pick is in, I'm just going to slide the card up. I'm not even going to see, because of the simple fact that guy, if he's a disruptive force, oh yeah, don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. You have 4 guys. Like if you have that guy that comes in and he could wreak havoc as a rookie with the guys we have on the roster, you don't even need to blitz. All you gotta do is just drop everybody in the coverage and just trust that front 4 to just wreak havoc.
And you pair him with Garrett. Well, Jarrett's there, and he's not getting any younger. He's 31, right? He's still got a couple years left, two, three good serviceable years left. But by committee, make no mistake about it, you need that guy in. He'll be in on almost every down, even though he's not going to be the true alpha, on the defensive line. Jarrett will be that guy. He'll be the seasoned veteran. But putting Mason Graham with a guy like that is going to set us up for a decade of dominance if he ends up being the defensive tackle that he's supposed to be. And make no mistake about it, for your 4-3 defense, Matt, you got to have a guy like that in the building at all times.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially,
Go ahead, Chris.
especially with the defensive coordinator, he loves a
Oh my.
defensive line that loves to hunt.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh my.
if he has that, if he becomes that guy and we get him at 10, it's gonna make this NFC North pay dearly for letting it happen, because of the simple fact that Dennis Allen, he's very aggressive, but he doesn't blitz in a crazy way. It's always controlled chaos, if you will. And when he has those pass rushers, he knows how to get them free and get home.
And that's why I'll be
Yeah,
surprised.
no, you know what? It's Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
That's what I say. I would be surprised. Listen, if he falls to number 10 and that's our pick, man, I will call all you guys. I will be drinking a beer. I'll be yelling and screaming, man. I'll be going nuts if that happens. I think he's such, to your point, I think he's so good and could be such a dominant force for so many teams that I think it'd be hard to pass on him, especially if you're looking for that type of player. Even if you're a team that's looking
But
for
that's
offensive lineman or quarterback, I know that's gonna be a tough call, man.
And that's where you have to decide, if you're a top 10 team in the draft, what is the most important need for your franchise? And that's why I wish, if I wasn't driving right now, and that's why I have my camera off, because I'm just doing the audio. I'm going back from Oliver Nazareth. How do you say that name? We're in Bourbonnais, where the Bears had the
Their little training camp.
Well, I just left there, and they're talking about us doing stuff for their college. So I was just there for track and field. They had a division, or what are they, conference track tournament, whatever. So yeah, it was cool to talk to everybody, and it was a good time. And I was supporting my buddy's kid was out there. He's a part of our show for like live events and stuff. But it was great, man. He plays football too. But anyways, getting back to the point, if I could pull up, and I would already have pulled up for you guys, the top 10 draft order of this year, it would be really interesting to find a team that wouldn't pick an edge over a defensive tackle or a running back or a quarterback or a receiver at that point. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well,
No.
we were all surprised last 2 years ago when the Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs with pick number 13 or 14, and we're like, why are they taking a running back for? And then he turns out to be one of the fastest guys in the league. So I guess it just depends what your scheme and your system and what type of coach you have. And at the end of the day, is what type of player you're going to bring in.
Not only that, but I think the Lions were set up so they could make a pick like that. The Lions didn't make that pick the year before, not just because Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't in that draft, but I don't think they were one Jahmyr Gibbs away. And listen, it happened at the perfect time, because everybody and their mama, like, they had like 9,700 guys injured. And Jahmyr Gibbs was the only guy that stayed healthy, and they needed to give him the rock 60-something% of the time. So it was a good pickup. But my point is like, I just don't think that they would have made that decision, Chris, the year before that. I really think that was something that was made when they had all the pieces around in order to execute. You know what I'm saying? Until then, it was running back by committee, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I definitely agree. The way I'm looking at how Chicago's building it, they invested quite a bit into the offensive line. There was draft
Yeah.
picks, trades, you're taking on contracts. And
Yes,
the
sir.
only two places I can see them going is either tackle or defensive tackle. because they put a lot of money into the edges. Secondary, probably have to worry about safety, but there's a lot of guys that you could pick up, like either like the second round or even later into the draft. I honestly think they may be going for him, if I'm being honest, because you
Yeah.
sign a guy like Grady Jarrett, but at the same time he's up there in age. So yeah, I do see them probably going for him. And it's if he turns out to be the player that's advertised, look out.
And I'll tell you another thing too, really quickly. I'd say we stay within the trenches at 39 and 41. There's a guy, Josh Connerly Jr. He fits all the physical specimen sizes that Ben Johnson likes. He likes guys with really big wingspans, guys that are tall, that are strong. The guy's got almost 11-inch arms, and if anybody's played offensive line like I have, this guy has all the tools, and he's got really good bend about him. And he gives me that Penei Sewell type vibe, not just because he's an Oregon Duck, but because of the way the guy plays. And I generally, if you guys have been watching my show, I don't pay attention. I stay in my lane. You don't ever hear me weigh in on defensive backs much, receivers much, because I'm not trying to act like I'm something that I'm not, because, the national media, or I've watched a couple highlight reels, and now I feel like I'm the smartest kid in the room. Now, I'm not saying I'm an offensive line specialist because I played, almost a decade of offensive lineman, and that's all that I ever was, except for some special teams. But I got a pretty good idea. And when I watch shows and we do live shows with Jim Miller, he's like, "How about you take your eye off of the offensive line every once in a while and maybe look at the quarterback and what else is going on out there, Trex?" Although to the point, he does like my acumen, and he does say that he prefers that because I share some things that normally he wouldn't see, because there's not too many people that really keep their eye on the offensive line the whole damn time. Because guess what, guys? When our offensive line isn't on the field, the other offensive line is. So it's crazy. I don't know why my mind always does that. And I don't know if you guys do that. I don't know, Chris, if you play defensive back, running back, or Matt, whatever position you played. But I feel like when you do that for a long period of time, that it kind of just. Do you guys do that? Do you guys do that when you watch football, or do you watch pretty much like the whole thing?
Oh, definitely. I do that. Like you watch more of the opposition. You watch for me, because I was a defensive back when I played. I didn't really go at the high level like everyone else. I didn't. I had the mental, but not the physicals. When you when you see that, you're watching how the receivers release, you're watching how the DBs, how they show their hand in coverage or how they disguise coverages. You're watching for stuff like that. So like that's the things that, because I've been on the field and been able to do certain things like that. Yeah, that's where my mind usually travels, because that's the part I know the most. So I totally understand where you're coming from, like, because when you mentioned 11, what was it? What you said? 11 inch arm, like what you said? 11-inch arms or something like that.
11-inch hands. 11-inch hands almost. 11-inch
11-inch
hands.
hands. Okay, yeah. See, for me, I don't really understand it like that. You, on the other hand, you see and you know what comes with that, because of the fact that you've
Can I tell
played
you
either
why?
that position or
Can
that
I
was
tell?
the opposition you faced on a game basis, on an every game basis. So for me as a DB, I would be worried about quick feet, release, tells and route running, and speed. Those are the things
Yeah.
I'd be worried about, and just being able to read route combinations. So for you,
Right.
you would be able to think
Yeah.
about like certain tells between like stance, hand placement, get off, stuff like that. And Coop would
Yeah.
probably be going off of something else, and because of the position he plays. So everybody has this a certain type of level of knowledge on different parts of the field based off of their experience.
Yeah. And let me just say why it's important to have all that real estate on your hand, because you can't block without your hands. And the more real estate you have on your hands, the bigger they are. Now, if all you got is hands and you don't know how to use them, well, then that's what it is. But if you use them the right way, they're a lethal weapon, especially when you can get them underneath the shoulder pads. And what I mean by underneath the shoulder pads, you take your heels, you drive them into the ground, and you push up as hard as you can, and you get your back, you fire away, and all that force, and you get it right up underneath the shoulder pads, right where your nipple and your chest is at. And you can make the biggest guy move the furthest if you have the right. I've seen a really little guy show me, and that's what really drove me. Like, you think you're big, you think you're tough, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I'm way big. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Watch this. I'm like, whoa. Same thing happened when I played up against a guy and I didn't know how to rebound, and he boxed me out for the first time. He goes, watch this. He's all, try to rebound now. Try to rebound now. And I'm like, dude, this guy's boxing me out. He's like not even 6 foot tall. It's embarrassing. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by, having those big hands, and it helps, brother. It helps a lot. I'm sure it helps. Well, list guys that can dunk a basketball. They get their hand on a basketball, same thing. The more real estate you have on a basketball, the more it helps, right? I would say.
It was like that too. I was a linebacker when I played, and for me, I was in coverage a lot. So when I watch football now, I watch a lot to what the offenses are doing, but especially I love watching linebackers play, and I love watching edge rushers because I want to see how they attack and follow the running back, or how they go into coverage, or how they're going to react when they start seeing people going into their zone, and how fast they get out there in time. So that's why it's always funny when you see a linebacker or a fast linebacker trying to cover like a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver, and people are like, well, why the hell is that linebacker on him for? What the hell is going? Well, I'm like, it's probably not his fault. It's probably that's because the coverage or something that he saw, that he was taught and you were preparing for, as a lot of us were when we were playing. And I think that was always the hardest part. I thought it was a really hard position to play.
Yeah, no, I've tried to play defensive line, Coop, in like reserve, like emergency reserve, and it's not the same. My brain doesn't operate the same way as, I've just always blocked, and I enjoyed it. I enjoy keeping my quarterback's jersey clean and blocking for the running back, and I have a good time. That's what I do. It's what I like to do. So, but
as a DB, my favorite thing is it being a non-eventful day. If you don't know my name, that means I did good.
You did your job.
The ball don't fly over here. That. Yeah, that's it. Like I want a good day for a defensive back is when you walk off the field on defense and it'd be like, has he been in the field the whole game? Because that the guy he's basically locked down. So, when it comes to that, like, yes, I would love, every DB loves to get a pick. Every DB loves to make a great hit. But, when it comes from the coverage aspect, you don't want your name to be called the whole game. Yeah, that's why one of my favorite corners is Darrell Reeves, because he's there. You just probably won't hear from him the whole game because that receiver's locked down.
That defensive line's having a good day too, right? The defense gets some pressure in the line.
That's frustrating though. That's what makes it so hard. If the D line don't get there, you're chasing the guy all day. You're like, ain't nobody got him down yet. The whistle should be going anytime now.
Over. Yeah.
Blow the whistle. The play's over, for God's sake.
But yeah, those were fun times when my knees was working.
When we didn't have any issues, right?
Yeah, right.
Fun back then. Trax, we're talking about the depth of the Bears here as you come on, and we were about ready to get into as we were talking about defense, we're talking about the linebackers, and if we think if we're set in our linebacker positions, or if we need to go out there and get somebody else, because I think we're pretty strong with Edmunds. I think Edmunds will have a better year this year, depending on how he fits in with Allen's defense. Agben Bayama also our starting linebacker, and then our backups with Sewell and Jones. And I was looking at the free agents for the linebacker position. And Chris, you too. I see what you guys think. I think the linebacker. I think the linebacker free agents. I got Eric Hendricks and C.J. Mosley, who I think are well past their prime. And this isn't necessarily a good draft for linebackers. I kind of like where we're at right now. Although if you find a depth piece in the draft, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. I mean, it's not going to be a bad thing finding any depth piece for any position that we have on this team right now. But I think our linebacker position is pretty strong.
I do, but I really miss Sanborn. And I think if you pick up a guy like Kaiser from Notre Dame, who was, not because, because of Notre Dame, just because he was a defensive, captain. And he did a good job. He's not the best. He's not the worst, but he plays the position well, and he was the captain. And I think that if you're going to pick late in the draft, 5th, 6th, 7th round, whatever, forgot where he's at. I know he's late, then I'd be okay with that because, and I'm not saying that that's going to be your guy all season, but I'm not saying that he's not going to be your guy all season. And I'm sure there's guys that you could pick up a little bit earlier or later that might be better. That's just one of the, and like I told you, I already said earlier, I don't pay attention to, there's certain positions I don't pay. Now, listen, Brian Urlacher on the field, guess what? Oh, yeah, I'm paying attention to him, right? But, we don't really, and haven't had a guy like that in a while. So, yeah, I'll let Chris answer this question. But that's the one guy that I see that could probably help us out, and it wouldn't, take a high draft pick to get. You know what I mean?
I honestly think we're good at linebacker. The way Dennis Allen uses his linebackers, they're timed to be aggressive, but they're guys that have speed. And then when they meet the running back in the hole, is Michael Jackson in the train station, a bad scene. Now the thing about it is when you have those type of guys, I honestly think that there's about probably one or two guys that kind of fit that bill because with Dennis Allen's defense, there's always like one or two tweeners, and it's like a guy that could play one position but then play another piece because of his athleticism, his toughness, his grit, or athletic ability. So like a senior CJ Garner Johnson, for example. He was a safety, but he had that twitch to play corner, and he was able to cover man to man. So I there is like one or two players in the draft I think that could fill that role. I think that, but I think that is good depth, probably go in the 3rd, 4th round. But we have right now, we got Trey, we got Edmonds and we have Edwards. I think those dudes play well off of each other as far as like a Batman 2 type of thing. And yeah, they both fly around the field and they both can hit. So I honestly think that Edmonds is going to have a lot better year just because of the simple fact he's not going to be dropping in the coverage all the time. He's not going. There's going to be times he's going to play man. There's going to be times that he's going to blitz. It's going to be. You're not going to know what he's going to do on every single play. And with his speed, I honestly think Dennis Allen's gonna get the best out of that. And along with Edwards' intelligence, his toughness, and his speed and aggressiveness, he's gonna get the best out of these guys. I think the only thing you could do is add depth at this particular point.
Well, yeah, but you didn't replace Sanborn, and he was a starter. So who's the third piece? You got the Mike, you got the Will, and you got the Sam. So we gotta have a starter somewhere in there. You know what I'm saying, brother?
I think that could be replaced in the draft too.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
My thing is that this is more of a passing league now, so it's rare that you have all 3 linebackers on the field. But so it's usually like the 2 best guys in coverage. Jack Sanborn is a great guy, effort guy, sideline to sideline, shows speed, toughness. But like, would you put him above a Tremaine Edmonds or an Edwards? And that's a question that I think that everybody would have different answers to.
Well, I just know that Dennis Allen, if you look, he runs sub packages in passing, but for the most part, like you said earlier, at the 4-3 position is what he runs, 82% of the time. But he also has sub packages within that for passing, and that's like 62, where he has a nickel in there. But, getting back to that point, at the 4-3, you got to have a starter, and who's that? Who's that Jack Sanborn that I think he had like 80 tackles? I don't think that guy's on the team. And he didn't take time away from, the other two linebackers and Edmonds, but you got to have, your base defense is a 4-3. You cannot not fill that position, Chris, is what I'm getting at.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, like, because it's a
Yeah,
passing league, it's
right.
it's not like usually now the one thing you're worried about more than that Sam or Will linebacker is more like the slot corner or tweener where it's a safety or a guy that can play the run like sort of like a lighter version of a linebacker, but could also cover. You know what I'm saying? So it's like because of the way the league is becoming now, it's more pass happy. You're not gonna really have a lot of
Yeah.
those heavy packages unless you're playing a team like Baltimore or a team like that loves to run the ball.
But
But
You
Chris,
know what?
the
I
reason why
totally understand
Sanborn,
it. I'm
eh,
still
yeah,
surprised that he's not on the roster because of how he
and,
played last year when
and
he
and
had to step in. The guy balled.
like I said though, you had Kyler Gordon on the same team as Sanborn. Sanborn still had like darn near 80 tackles, and he still started. You got to find a guy that replaces those 80 tackles. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
Regardless of
something
whether
else
you
got to
run a
replace with
4.
him.
What's that?
Oh, I was gonna say something. Don't forget too how great of a special teams player he was too.
Oh, dude, he was so good. Yeah, you got
I
to
think
get
that's
that
what's
guy.
gonna hurt. I think that could hurt just as much as anything with the Sanborn losses. You got to find that guy that can ball like Sanborn was, man. How great he was. I thought every time he was on the field, man, he was making plays as a special teams player. As we just lost Brandon here, but we're talking about the linebacker position right now, and all great points too. Listen, I thought Jack Sanborn. I thought that was about. I was really hoping he was going to come back with us. I get it too because of the money and all the money that we spent everywhere else. You can't allocate everything into all of your players that you want to bring back, especially when you're going to sign it, trying to rebuild an offensive line. So I understand everything that happened there, but I'm just saying the importance of Jack Sanborn. I think we've just talked about it, Chris, between special teams and linebacker, and it's just a position, and it's something that we're just going to have to fill and try to find and replace. And it's going to be tough, but I think it can happen in the draft, and we're just going to have to see how this one plays out. As we're all big Jack Sanborn fans. Plus, it's
I,
also
I,
from
I'll
Chicago
be
too.
honest. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes up and like Robert Spillane when he was with Pittsburgh. He didn't really shine as well, but he had his moments, and then he went to the Raiders, and then all of a sudden now he's a starting linebacker. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a Jack Sanborn type of story where he's starting somewhere else in the league
Yeah,
because
let's go
they
back to
play similar. A lot of
yeah,
effort, everything, all out, every single play. So
he's
yeah.
he's going to a familiar system in Dallas with Matt Eberflus and the same linebackers coach too. So he'll fit right in. We're breaking down our depth here of the Chicago Bears. Thank you guys in the chat room too. We see all you guys. Thank you so much. I see Howie our Bears has joined in as well. The one position that I think is the strongest position on our team is cornerbacks. Where we have Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson as our 1-2. We have our nickel and Kyler Gordon, Josh Blackwell, Terrell Smith, who I think did a very good job stepping in last year. I don't think this is a position we need to address. Now, listen, if you find somebody, maybe an undrafted free agent that you can come and bring in and put in there, but I think if there's any position on our team right now, Chris, that is stacked from top to bottom, it's our cornerbacks, and I like everybody that we have right now as it's currently constructed.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I never talked about all year as far as like needs. You had two corners, both of them I believe that were rookies in their rookie season. They played so well. The Bears almost traded Jalen Johnson.
Yeah,
That said something. So now Kyler Gordon has came into his own last year, and you have about a good four guys that can play that position. Like that could play their position. Because Kyler Gordon was mainly, a good guy, a great guy in the slot last year. And I honestly think corners don't even touch it. If you want to add a little bit of depth, go right ahead. Guy in the free agency, I wouldn't even really spend a pick on it like that unless it's somebody that can add something to this secondary that another guy can't do, which I don't really see happening.
By the way, Kyler Gordon, I think is going to get paid too. I'm going to be interested to see, especially what type of season that he has this year, and see what type of money he's going to get, because when he came in last year, especially at the end of the season, he made some impact plays, man. He was all over the field. You saw him being disruptive, man. He was so much fun to watch at that time especially those last, like, nothing was a lot of fun watching the Bears games those last 6 weeks, but he was fun to watch.
Yeah, it seemed like they got a idea on how to use him, because usually it was just drop back into coverage, but nah, it was yeah, we're gonna send him on blitzes, we're gonna have him do other things as well, and he thrived. So yeah, I think he's gonna get paid, and we're gonna see what else happens with the secondary.
Thank you guys in the chat room. I see Illinois Jones in here right now. Thank you guys for watching tonight. You could share this video on to all of your other Bears friends and let them know about the Chicago Sports Podcast. We're talking about the depth right now. Chicago Bears, is it enough to win? We're at one of our final ones here. It's the safeties position, which I think is going to be key. We've talked a little bit about this too, Chris, on our shows about the safeties, about if the Bears are going to attack that in the draft or they're going to attack it in free agency. Because as it stands right now, we have Kevin Byard coming back, Jaquan Brisker, and then our backups are Elijah Hicks. We have Jonathan Owens, who's also a special teams player, Alex Cook. I think this is a position that we have to attack in the draft. And there's still a couple of free agents that are still out there. We're talking about names probably like 5 years ago that would be bigger than what they are now. Justin Simmons, Marcus Williams, who was on the Ravens, Jordan Whitehead. Justin Simmons used to be a really good player, especially those years in Denver. He did not have a very good year in Atlanta last year. We just don't know. Here's what I'm trying to say here with Chris, with Jaquan Brisker. I love Brisker. He's one of my favorite. Probably, if you were to put a top 5 list of favorite Bears players on the team right now, he'd be in my top 5. I love the way he plays. He plays hard. He's fast. He gets to the ball pretty quick. He's a smart player. The concussion problem, though, man, you just worry about that problem alone, especially the amount of time that he missed last year, because that is nothing you mess around with. You just don't know what the health is going to be. So you can't go into this draft thinking that you're set in the safety position. I think you have to go into this draft, at least in the first few picks that you have. And if there's a safety that is there, and it's a safety that you think is reliable and that can be a big impact on this team, I think you have to take them.
The confidence I have in the secondary, it's the polar opposite when the confidence I have in the corner is just the polar opposite when it comes to the safety, mainly because of youth and availability. I honestly would, even though I said youth, I honestly wouldn't get mad if you get a guy like a Justin Simmons, just because of the fact that he was a great safety, but you also see the veteran leadership. You also see the experience when he's on the field, and he played well with a guy like Jesse Bates, leading the show as far as the back end of that secondary in Atlanta. Um, I do think with Jaquan Brisker, it makes it so you have a guy like Justin Simmons who could play back, who could come up, play in the hook corner, the high zone, low zone. And the thing is, it makes it so you're not putting so much on Brisker, where you're playing him out of his strengths. And also with Jaquan Brisker, the one thing you're worried about with a physical player like that is his availability, because it's his health. And he's been having problems, like, staying healthy. And I hope he gets back, he comes back, and he stays healthy throughout the season, so we can see the best of what he can do. But at this particular time, I can't really trust him to be available for a full season. So I have to see about getting another guy in the draft. And the reason why I say about a Justin Simmons is, now you have another veteran that could play and also teach and tutor the guy you're bringing in, and even tutor Jaquan Brisker himself. He's still within his rookie deal. There's still stuff that he can learn from the two guys like Byard and Simmons that have been in this league for almost already a decade. So the safety position, if you need to attack that in free agency and in the draft, I see it as, you're getting probably a second, a third, maybe fourth, just because of the simple fact that the middle of the field and the deep is one of the things you don't want happening as a defense, because deep shots, they take a lot out of a defense, and on top of that, it can be a momentum changer for offenses.
especially in our division too. When you think about our division, about the teams that we play in our division and the wide receivers that we go up against, I mean, between the Lions and the Vikings, I mean, you got playmakers all over the place on those teams, and even with their quarterbacks. So I love Jaquan Brisker, man. The strong safety is such a hard position to play because you're always right there. You're like the ball hawk in the back there, man, making those big plays like he does. And it's just very unfortunate what has happened to him in his career right now. So I hope nothing but the best for him, and I hope he comes back. Everything it looks like, especially if you follow him on X, Twitter, whatever hell you want to call it right now, everything that you see what he puts out there looks like he's playing next year. So I'm all the best and all the hope that happens. But to your point, yeah, maybe it is a good idea to bring in a veteran like a Justin Simmons and have that depth back there. So it'll be interesting to see how they attack. I do think that's going to be one of the positions they attack here in the next couple of weeks leading up to the draft. Chris, our final position is special teams for our depth. We did sign Devin Duvernay, so he's going to be our returner, which I thought that was a really good signing. He was on Jacksonville last year. A lot of us remember him on the Ravens. Is there anything that you would do with the kicking situation? Listen, we have Taylor that we drafted last year. Obviously, we know he's going to be back there. But Cairo Santos is an interesting name to me. I think he's fine where he is right now. If you want to bring some kickers in to give him some competition in training camp, I'm all for that. If you think there's somebody better out there that's coming out of college, I'm all for that. If Cairo Santos is our kicker first week of the season, I'm for that too. I think either way at this point, I don't know if you're going to be able to get better, but maybe you find somebody in coming out that could give them some competition.
I would say bring in competition, but as of right now, I think Cairo Santos is the best option so far. Um, you can. I'm not gonna say you could use a draft because I haven't really seen a lot of teams like draft a kicker. Even if
Oh,
they
you won't see
do, it's
that.
in like the sixth or seventh round, particularly particularly around those times in the draft. But I think with the depth we're trying to add, I don't really see a kicker being drafted. Probably undrafted free agent, bring a guy into camp. Hey, let's see what he got. But as far as like putting all this crazy effort into a kicker, even though you got Cairo Santos, I don't really see it being as a necessity.
And that's what you usually see after the draft's over. You'll see the kickers, the undrafted free agents. That's where they usually come from. And a lot of teams will bring them in to training camp and give competitions. So I think that's what will end up happening at the end of the day, Chris. So we'll find out what happens. But it'll be interesting to see how our special teams is. It's going to be a fun year to watch with all of our positions and the draft just a couple of weeks away. And Chris, I'm excited to see what they end up building here because we're definitely not done yet. I think we've improved on this team. I think this team's going to be better, but I think this draft's going to be very important, not only for this year, but for the next 2 years, especially if you think this is your window right now.
I honestly think, and we got to give credit to Ryan Poles and the way he's working together with Ben Johnson because I honestly think that they set this team up to what Ben Johnson is familiar with. When you look at the pieces that they had in Detroit and the pieces they have been getting in Chicago right now, it's starting to look like that. It mirrors it. The strengths, the weaknesses. You have pieces that can attack different levels. You have, a defensive coordinator in Dennis Allen. He looks like he has the pieces that he had in his best years when he was defensive coordinator for New Orleans. So it's looking really good because usually this type of thing, as far as like filling positions based off of what type of system your coaches run, usually that takes about a good probably year to maybe even 3 or 4. And he seems like to be getting it done effortlessly in year one of getting this coaching staff. So I gotta give profit. I got not profit. I gotta give props to Ryan Poles just because of how he executed this offseason. I would give it a B plus. If he makes a big splash in those first 2 rounds of the draft and find a gem, that'll be an A plus for me.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. Me too. I'm with you on that too with Ryan Poles. That's good. That's a good point. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Thank you guys for watching tonight. The Bears on Track show brought to you by Chicago Sports Podcast. We appreciate everybody in the chat room. We appreciate you guys watching. You can like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. That notification will pop up every time we have a live show. And we have live shows on here all the time, so you can follow us along. And that's the beauty of it. Can't wait to get caught up this weekend because we have so many shows and so many more shows to look forward to. Chris Light Dreams Brown, dude, it was good to see you tonight, man.
Good talking football with you again, man. It's been a while. You know what I'm saying? So it's great to come back on here with you. Talk sports, Chicago Bears, the roster, the coaching. Love it every time I get the chance, man.
I know, man. Me too, man. Me too. So it was good to see you again. And Brandon Trax Hyde, who was just on here a little bit ago with us too, the creator of everything. It was great to have him on with us. Just talk about some football and Chicago Bears, and to you guys again. So Chicago Sports Podcast. Thank you guys for watching, and we will talk to you soon.